Welcome to the Athlete Insights Podcast, hosted by Yash Pad Day, a podcast focused on letting athletes tell their journeys in their sport. This podcast is presented by Boxed Water. Boxed water is better.
Welcome into another episode of the Athlete Insights Podcast. Today I've got my guest, Trey Moses, who currently plays for Victoria Basketball Club in Porto in Portugal. He's a former Ball State basketball player. It's where Trey and I met. As you know, I went to Ball State. So I appreciate you, Trey, coming on. I know you guys have had practice and, a busy schedule here and there, but appreciate you coming on and chopping it up, man.
No, man. Thanks for finally having me on. I feel like I've been waiting years for this moment, but
I got you.
I'm glad I'm finally worthy enough to be on the pod, man.
Oh, I appreciate you. And on this opportunity. But like I do with all my guests, I want to start back at the beginning and kind of work through your career and talk about all the unique and wonderful things that you've done in your career. But when was it that you really first kind of fell in love with sport? What age would you say was really sport really kind of was on your radar at that time?
I feel like my dad really put basketball and football in my life from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
I was always playing something, going to a practice, doing something within the sport,
Gotcha.
within the sports world. And then going into high school, I basically decided that I just wanted to stick with basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad probably a little heartbroken because he's more of a football guy, but
Okay.
my dad just said, if you're going to do this, you need to go all in.
Yeah.
And, that's going to, individuals, just certain aspects of going all in to one sport looks different than, doing multiple sports. And, that's what I did. I felt like I went all in for basketball. My freshman year, I actually broke my leg. I fractured my femur along the growth plate, and I was 6'3" at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, the doctor said it was the worst break he had ever seen.
Okay.
And they said I wouldn't grow anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously I've grown 6 inches since then. So
Gotcha.
definitely a blessing and a curse at the same time. But yeah, so then after that, I just worked my way back to it and, finished my high school career out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you mentioned the uniqueness there of your high school career with your injury and how you overcame that injury, and want to talk through. I always talk with the athletes that I interview about their recruiting process and how you got recruited. Can you talk about in high school how your recruiting process worked and kind of go through that?
Yeah, man. I wasn't getting recruited at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh.
was like, there's no chance I'm going to play college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I think after high school, I'm going to be done.
Yeah.
I didn't really think I had a chance to play at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into my senior year, so that junior year summer,
Mm-hmm.
I switched to AAU teams, and I got 12 Division I offers from July to August.
Oh, wow.
My first being Northern Kentucky. And so in that process, I took unofficial to Northern, Radford, Cleveland State.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was actually super bummed that Cleveland State didn't offer me.
Oh.
I think if they would have offered me, that's, my career probably looks so much different. Not even good or bad. I'm just saying that's probably where
Mm-hmm.
I end up going to play.
Yeah.
But they didn't, again, blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't end up offering. We played in the national AAU tournament in Louisville.
Gotcha.
I played against Bam Adebayo.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, our assistant coach at Ball State, Brian Thornton,
Mm-hmm.
this is like the first coach I've ever seen where it's like we're looking eye to eye. He's a big guy, played at Xavier, played overseas. He's now the WAC commissioner, I believe.
Oh, wow.
But after that game, he just looked at me and was like, "Good game, big fella."
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I probably got that offer a couple of days later.
Mm-hmm.
I took a official visit to VMI which I love VMI and their coaches. Many people don't know this, but I love peanut butter and jelly. And so their assistant coach, we were really close, but he knew I loved peanut butter and jelly too. So we went to their football game, and at the tailgate, his wife made me like a triple decker peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was nuts. But I love that visit, love BMI, but I just didn't see myself in the military kind of situation. So that wasn't really for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to kind of see it out and see if I felt differently going through the visit.
Gotcha.
Love the coaches, love the school, is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following weekend, I took my official Ball State. I kind of had a sense that's where I wanted to go. You know, it was
Gotcha.
far from home, but not too far from home. It's about 3 hours for me.
Mm-hmm.
Loved the school, loved my official.
Yeah.
You know, I loved Coach Witt and believed in everything that he said, and I ended up committing that Sunday before leaving back home.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you said like once you switched AAU teams, the offer started to kind of roll in and started to come through. And so and I'm grateful you chose Ball State because we were able to connect, and obviously other individuals as well in our friend group were able to connect. So that was I would say I'm grateful that I was able to connect with you in that regard as well. And so can you talk about one of the reasons I started the podcast was a way to kind of help youth athletes or provide kind of a source of inspiration in youth athletes in that way. So could you talk about, we went to school. I mean, when you got recruited, I mean, we went to Ball State in the same era timeline. We didn't have NIL. Like transfer portal really wasn't that big a deal. What kind of advice or recruiting tips would you give to kids currently who now are in this era of transfer portal, NIL? I was looking, I mean, Cam McCormick, Miami's tight end, like he's been transferring, like he's in his 9th year of eligibility and all this stuff. Like, what kind of advice would you give to kids now, based on your experiences and your recruiting journey? About recruiting and tips about that regard.
You know, to high school kids, I'd say take whatever offer you can get. If it's, JUCO, D3, D2, low D1, mid-major, whatever you can get, because a lot of these schools are looking for the veterans that are transferring. So going from high major to mid-major, mid-major to low major, low major to Division II. So a lot of these high school kids are in a sense getting screwed because of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And then to the guys transferring, I would say, I think it's easy to chase money.
Mm-hmm.
That aspect of stuff is something that I never dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say go to somewhere that feels like home, where there's, where you feel like a coach really cares about you. One thing I'll say about Witt, he's an assistant at Rhode Island now, but at the end of the day, like I know Witt cared about us more as people than he did as players.
Mm-hmm.
We could have lost every single game of my career if it meant that we became better men.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we didn't lose every game of my career. But at the end of the day, like I know that Witt cared about us as people first, and to have a coach like that to me means everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a coach like that actually cares about you, I think as players you're willing to give it all. Not that we don't always give our all, but at the end of the day, if you you have a coach that would bend over backwards for you, you're going to do the same thing for that coach. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I know it's a little tough for me to speak on it because I'm not in that NIL era, but those would probably be my two biggest tips. And the biggest thing I've seen, especially like in the high school aspect, is that a lot of high school kids that may have been recruited back in my time aren't going to get recruited the same because of the transfer portal. So you kind of got to take whatever offers and chances you get, because you decide to wait and see who else is going to offer. You never know, because on my official visit at Ball State, and I later found out it's kind of just a coaching tactic, but Witt said, basically it was like, your offer's there still, but we have another big coming next week, and if he commits, that's your offer. And
Mm,
so for me, I was like, I'm not taking that chance. Like I'm committing now.
yeah.
I was already fully set on committing, but
Mm,
I'm committing now and I'm ready to go.
yeah.
And so a lot of these high school kids are losing these opportunities, trying to wait to see what else they can get.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's good to hear you say like, from your perspective, of like finding a place that feels like home and not just chasing the NIL money. Because I've seen a lot of that when I was at Northern Colorado and things like that, where kids are trying to move up to kind of get the bag, as they call it, in terms of NIL. And so, it's good to kind of get that perspective of, find somewhere that fits, rather than looking at where you get the most
and
NIL.
you also got to figure out like what you want. So
Yeah.
obviously, but I coached high school girls from Australia last summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've talked to all the girls that I coach, and then there was 37 other girls on the tour, and
Mhm.
a lot of the ones that are getting recruited, they're heavily recruited that
Yeah.
I've spoken with, and I'm talking like mid to high major girls.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to figure out what you want out of a school. Is it
Mhm.
playing style? Is it how the coach coaches? Is it location? Is it the opportunity for NIL money? Is it
Yeah.
playing time?
Mhm.
So for me, not a lot of people know I was supposed to redshirt. They wanted to redshirt me at Ball State,
Mm.
and I was like, there's not a chance I'm redshirting. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And so I worked my ass off. Sorry for cussing. I don't know
You're good. You're good.
um, I worked my ass off, lost, I don't know, 25 pounds
Yeah.
before my freshman year. And I ended up starting 9 games, averaging 20 minutes as a freshman. We went to the Bahamas before
Mhm.
my freshman year started. I, almost had a triple double my first live action.
Wow.
So I think that aspect of, you know, figuring out what you want out of a school, and it's the same thing as becoming a pro. Like, what do you want, as a professional? Is it money? Is it location? Is it, opportunity? And so for me this year it was location and opportunity. I'm in Portugal where I've played before. I love our system. I'm getting to play in a different. I'm playing the four this year,
Mhm.
mainly four.
Yeah.
Very few minutes at the five. I'm shooting threes. I'm being able to be a playmaker.
Mhm.
And so for me, um, that would be my biggest advice to high school kids and people transferring is like figuring out what you want out of a school.
Mhm. No, and that's key, right? And I love what you said, that like what you want, like geography, location, all these different factors play into it, in that regard. And obviously, you said Ball State for you being 3 hours, not too close to home, but not too far away from home, when you want to
But
get.
then I also love the educational aspect because I was
Yeah,
going to be a special education major.
yeah,
Ended up switching out, but from special education to sports link, those were two aspects that I wanted to pursue,
for
and
sure.
I didn't end up pursuing either of them. Actually, I got my degree in child development, but I knew that I wanted to go to a school where I could get an education that like I valued. So
Yeah.
with VMI, they didn't have special education. So I knew for me, like VMI wasn't going to be a good fit because like I loved working with kids with disabilities. Even though I ended up switching my major, the opportunity at Ball State was there for me.
For sure, for sure. It's all about, like you said, the educational piece, because you guys are student athletes, so the educational piece is, a key factor in that as well. And so, can you talk about? I want to talk about, because I know, when I was watching interview with Coach Witt a couple years back, he talked about, recruiting. It was a sports link piece, and he talked about recruiting you, and he said we didn't recruit Trey, just solely for being a basketball player, for everything that he does outside of basketball, which I want to touch on as well, and all the ventures that you've done. But can you talk about your experience at Ball State and kind of when you arrived at Ball State and you said you went, when you went to the Bahamas, you dropped a triple double, and you started off, you didn't want a red shirt and things like that, but Can you talk about kind of the differences in the high school game versus what you noticed when you got to college and kind of your experience at Ball State in that regard?
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on first. What was I about to say? So first with Ball State, they had 5 wins and 7 wins the 2 years before I got there.
Okay.
And so I had a lot of people saying, why are you choosing Ball State? Look, you've had 13 wins in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But I know for me, I believed in Coach Witt. And on my visit, I got to talk to players, got to see players work out, got to see it practice. And I was like, I know for a fact this isn't a 7-win team.
Mm-hmm.
And so my freshman year, we won 20 games. And granted, that's to the players that were there. That's to Taylor Persons. That's to Ryan Weber. I think that was his first year playing because he had transfer redshirt the year before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we put together a team that could compete, and we won 20 games back to back my freshman sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
So like that aspect of stuff was important for me to be a part of a culture change because we, after my first year, my second year I made all defensive team, third year, third team all MAC. But I look at it at that saying, I feel like that class with me, Taylor, Tajay, started a culture shift to winning basketball. And we didn't, granted, we never won the MAC, never went to the tournament, but all 4 years I was there, we won the MAC West, or at least a share of it. And that aspect was important to me because, they hadn't done it in a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't go in saying, oh, I'm the missing piece. I just went in saying, I want to be a part of something bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, the guys that were there, plus me, Taylor, Tajay, that came in, really were a part of that mission. And in terms of the biggest difference, it's all speed.
Yeah.
The game's quicker. You're playing with a shot clock.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets faster from every level, and you see how guys work out.
Yeah.
So the difference between working out in high school and how I trained is so much different now that I'm a pro because I've seen how to do it. And I'm also smart about my body in terms of, in the off season, especially now in year 6, I'm 27. Like, if there's days where I'm not feeling the best, it's like, do I push myself in a certain aspect or do I push myself in a different aspect where the different aspect isn't going to physically drain me? It's like stretching, mobility, core, conditioning. So I'm really, my trainer, Brian Brooks, really helps with that too, in terms of being smart with your lifting, conditioning, on court stuff, to where it's like I go 3 months back home in the off season, I'm not physically drained when I get to the start of training camp.
Gotcha.
And so I think a big thing with Witt, even from my freshman year, he has always told me, it's not even something I had dreams of, or everyone dreams of being a pro, but it's not something I thought could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since my freshman year, he said, Trey, like, you have the opportunity to be a pro. Like, I've been around pro guys. Like, you have the skill, you have the talent. It's just, there's certain things I needed to do better to get there. But he always used to preach to us, like, train like pros. So it was like, lifting, shooting, practice every single day.
Yeah.
And so that aspect of training like a pro is key. And, as a high school kid, I didn't understand it, but you also don't understand it till you get there. And obviously a lot of these coaches just aren't throwing you into the fire. They're going to help you learn how to do that. But it's the same thing as a pro. You don't learn how to be a pro automatically. And, I learned that lesson the hard way, but it's through people that have been there. It's through, failing. I've failed multiple times in my career.
Yeah.
And I've bounced back every time. So that aspect is speed, going from high school, college to professional level is what I would say is the biggest thing.
Yeah. And when you were at Ball State, I know even before that, I think so in high school and at Ball State, Like I said, you did a lot of work with Best Buddies. Currently, you have your nonprofit 24 Reasons. You do a lot of work with mental health awareness in that regard. Can you talk about the ventures that you've had outside of basketball, and can you let our viewers and listeners know about those ventures as well?
Yeah, so for me, Best Buddies started my sophomore year when I met Corey Pitzenberger, sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
He was a kid. Well, he is a kid that he's not a kid no more. He's grown, but
Mhm.
he at the time he was a kid who just loved high school basketball, knew all the stats, knew all the facts, knew who I was, and
Yeah.
we became friends. And then through him, I met Blake Cummins,
Mhm.
who has Down syndrome, and that's how I got into. Wow, I can't even remember the name. This makes me look bad. But that's how I got into the basketball. So I was on the court with them, sharing the ball.
Yeah.
Couldn't rebound, but I was allowed to pass. They could pass to me.
Mhm.
So I was on the court with them, and
Gotcha.
then that's how I met Ellie Meredith,
Mhm.
who I ended up taking to prom my senior year.
Gotcha.
And so I've always just, and then through those three, I've always just been a part of Best Buddies. It's something I'm passionate about, working with kids with disabilities. And so through them, not through them, but because of them, I now have basketball camps every summer for
Mhm.
Dreams with Wings and Down syndrome in Louisville. And
Gotcha.
that's something I look forward to, that I'm always excited about.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned 24 Reasons.
Can you talk about
So,
that story and kind of how that started
mhm,
in that regard?
yeah. So for me, my mental health story starts in seventh grade. That was the first time I had thoughts of wanting to not be alive. And I remember telling someone, a girl in my class, and she ended up telling the counselor. I just made some story up about why I was feeling the way I felt, because I felt like I was just ashamed of it. I didn't know what depression or anxiety was. And
Mhm.
going through high school, that's when I started to self harm.
Mhm.
And then my freshman year, that was we had someone from the counseling center come in for to do a survey. Basically, gave a survey to all the student athletes,
Mhm.
excuse me, that were on campus at the time.
Mhm.
And I filled the survey out truthfully, not thinking anything would come from it. She came back a week later, and that was like my first glimpse of counseling.
Mhm.
And so, that's where I was diagnosed with, severe depression and anxiety. I was medicated for a little bit. My freshman year, I was also hospitalized twice for not feeling safe, but still only three people knew, and that was that was her, our student advisor, and
Mhm.
our athletic
Okay.
athletic trainer.
Mhm.
And one day my freshman year, I'm crying before practice. Didn't know why. I'm just crying before practice, and our athletic trainer looks at me and says, "Trey, I think you should tell Coach Witt." And
Mhm.
I was scared. Being a freshman, not having a role or a place yet.
Yeah.
I just felt like that's not really an acceptable thing.
Mhm.
And Coach Witt came in, and I told him everything. And he said, "Hey, big fella, just go home today. I'll tell the guys you're sick, and when you're ready to open up, you can. Or you don't have to.
Mhm.
There's no rush." And so, because of Coach Witt giving me that comfort, I felt like I could open up.
Mhm.
Um, my sophomore year, I was after the season, I tried to take my life,
Mhm.
and I'll never forget Zach Hollywood, one of my teammates and best friends. He um, he texted me and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" Sorry, I gotta get some water.
You're good.
He texted me and said, "Why didn't you tell me, bro? I would have been here for you."
Mhm.
And sorry, and I didn't know how. I didn't know how to explain how or who to tell.
Mhm.
That aspect of stuff was new to me.
Gotcha.
There were certain people that knew.
Mhm.
Um, and then my junior year, um, so my birthday is August 21st. Had teammates over, friends over, and I'll never forget. I saw Zach, and it's still just ingrained in my head. I
Mhm.
saw Zach, and it was the happiest I'd ever seen him. Um, he was a guy that had gone through a lot,
Mhm.
but it was the happiest I've ever seen him. And it was just like, wow, like I think he's turning the corner. He
Mhm.
was starting counseling the following week.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like things are starting to get good.
Mhm.
And I think I take from, that was my 20th birthday.
Yeah.
I take from that, maybe my 20th, no, that was my 20th. I take from that and say, like, that was probably my favorite birthday ever. And
Mhm.
it's solely because of how happy I saw Zach.
Yeah.
And then, the next day I had class. So August 22nd, it was like our third day of classes.
Mhm.
Had class, I had class at 10 to 10:50, 11 to 11:50.
Mhm.
You know, woke up at like 9:45 like I did.
Uh,
Not good. So all the people watching I got to class on time, but
yeah.
just you know what I'm saying. Don't
Mhm.
don't wake up 15 minutes before class.
For sure.
But I woke up with four missed calls and two messages from Zach,
Mhm.
two voice messages. So throughout class I was texting him. After my first class, I called him. No response. After my second class, still hadn't heard anything. So I asked his roommate and our other teammate, Kyle Mallard, if he could take me over there.
Mhm.
I walked into to Zach's room. He had taken his life.
Mhm.
Um, so from there, I'll never forget everything. Having to call the police, them asking me if are you sure he's not alive? Like telling me to check his pulse, and I'm having to check the pulse of a best friend, someone
Yeah.
who's just completely cold.
Mhm.
Um, and so that aspect was, killed me.
Yeah.
Um, at his funeral, I asked his dad if I could, wear 24 in Zach's honor,
Mhm.
and he said yes. So I still wear number 24. And um, crazy story. My second year pro, we actually had a kid that already had the number 24, but after hearing my story, he gifted it to me,
Oh. Okay.
um, because of the importance. He knew the importance for me.
Mhm.
Um, so, with all that being said, I started 24 Reasons, obviously carrying the number 24.
Yeah.
But for me, it was something that's bigger than my story, bigger than Zach's story.
Yeah.
This is something where we're trying to end the stigma around mental health and suicide prevention. So I started originally in 2019, not really having a plan,
Mhm.
not knowing what I wanted to do. We were just, selling shirts and things like that. My agent helped me, well,
Mhm.
my agents, and you know, officially in 2023 we became nonprofit, and so. And obviously you're a part of that too. So I'm super thankful that you're on board, and someone that does a lot for us. But with that said, we had our first event last summer.
Mhm.
We had a celebrity all-star game. Um, it was one of those things where I had very low expectations. I'm also one of those people that kind of think the worst at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think probably a week before we
Mhm.
had less than 20 tickets sold.
Oh.
So I was like, wow, this is going to be rough.
Yeah.
And we ended up having 500 people come
Mhm.
out and support.
Sure.
Um, and I got to tell my story. And I look at that moment, and I think that's one of the most proud moments that I am of not only myself, but, it just shows how many people I have that love me and care about me,
Yeah.
especially within, the board of 24 Reasons, people that believe in me, that fight for me, that
Yeah.
believe in my story, that want to help 24 Reasons get to wherever we can end up taking it.
Yeah. And I'm
And
excited. I know we're bringing it back this year as well, and I'm excited because last year, as you know, I was I was in Colorado working on the doctor and everything.
mhm.
Got busy with that, but I'm excited now that I'm here in Kentucky that I'll be able to participate and help out in any way I can. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, yeah, man. June 21st, man. Y'all
Yeah.
show up,
Yeah.
show out. It'll be a good time. Um, but yeah, that's where we're at now. We also I also spoke at D'Angelo Russell's camp in front of 500 people at his camp. We did curriculum for another local nonprofit for their kids.
Mhm.
So we're really trying to not only end the stigma within kids, but that's probably our target audience is kids to young adults, and
Yeah.
trying to make it okay not to be okay,
Mhm.
and to keep showing up.
Yeah.
I think that aspect of things is something that's super, super important. And if we can just help one person, then our mission's complete. But I feel like we're helping a lot of people with what we're doing.
Yeah. And 24 Reasons and what we do, like you said, we have the opportunity to impact so many individuals. And that's the key, right? At the end of the day, really, I've heard Kobe say this. I've listened to a lot of like Kobe stuff. I've listened to him. He said the biggest thing you can do in your life is positively impact other individuals. And so, it's great to see kind of what you've done with not just 24 Reasons, but with Best Buddies as well. What you've done with that and the special needs community as well, and assisting them. So it's great to see that process. But before we end the podcast, like I said before, really wanted to utilize my platform and the podcast to kind of provide advice, inspiration through the people that I interview to young people and getting young people into sport and youth and promoting youth sport. And so, really want to ask you, Trey. I know I asked for you for recruiting advice for high school kids, but for kids that are in elementary school, middle school, youth sports that are coming up that want to be like you, play basketball at the Division I level, potentially go pro, and then be kind of where you are and the success and get to that success level of where you've gotten. What's one piece of advice or one thing that you would say to youth athletes?
Man, you're killing me with the one piece of advice thing, because like me, I coached,
Hey,
like I also said, I coached last summer. So
yeah,
a lot of the stuff I was telling the girls is a
yeah,
lot of the stuff I kind of preach in general. But I think the biggest
yeah,
is be a good teammate, man.
yeah.
A lot of we don't always play our A game. We
Mhm.
don't always shoot 100%. We don't always make the right reads.
Yeah,
But if a coach knows you can play and you're the worst teammate in the world, you're not getting recruited. But if
yeah,
a coach knows you're decent, have
yeah,
potential, and
yeah,
are the best teammate, and your coaches talk highly of you, your teammates talk highly of you, your teachers,
yeah,
your counselors, your principals, like be a good person.
yeah,
Be the best person you can be every single day. And that doesn't mean you're gonna be perfect. It doesn't mean you're gonna not make mistakes, not hurt people, not do all the different things. But if you go into every situation, every encounter you have with people,
mhm,
every game, every class you have, everything you do, if you go in with the intention of I'm going to be a good person, I'm going to be a good teammate, I'm going to be a good student,
yeah,
I'm going to be a good brother, a good son, a good daughter, whatever it is, if you go into everything with the intention of I'm going to be good to the people around me,
mhm,
and then not even just I'm going to be good to the people I come across, because being just good to the people you're with doesn't mean shit, truthfully,
yeah,
because you're always going to treat, not always, but you're majority of the time going to treat the people in your life great.
yeah,
It's the people that can't do anything for you. How are you going to treat them?
yeah,
And the girls that I coached, those girls will never play with any of those girls again, because they're all over from Australia.
mhm,
But the 9 girls I had, we became family in 3 weeks.
mhm,
And it's all because at the end of the day, they knew that those girls couldn't do anything for them
Yeah.
besides be on the court together.
Yeah.
But they're going to be the best teammate. They're going to be their biggest cheerleaders. They're going to be the biggest supporters. And that should just be how it is in life, too.
Yeah.
The people that can't do anything for you, how do you treat them?
Yeah.
How do you treat the people that can't do anything for you? And when no one's watching, how do you treat those people?
Yeah.
And so for me, I look at kids with disabilities. At the end of the day, they can't do much for me,
Mhm.
but I care about them more than I care about most things. I care about the community. I care about, people with mental health issues. Because I'm not getting anything for 24 reasons, but I want to help people.
Yeah.
I want to help individuals who may be overlooked, not sought after, not cared for, may not feel like they're cared for.
Yeah.
I just want to care for those people.
No, for sure, for sure. And it's like it feels good, and I'm sure you're the same way, especially with the work that you're doing. I mean, I know from my end with my podcast and with stuff like that, when I get DMs from parents and kids about kind of watching and kind of feeling an impact from that, I'm like, it feels good when I know I can go to bed at night, put my head on the pillow, know I'm doing something, no positively impacting people that I didn't know of before or whatever it may be. So, I'm sure if
And
I'm
that
not,
and that's
I don't know
another
if it's for
thing.
you, but I know it's probably similar on your part too, in terms of when you go about that as well.
But that's another thing. Like it's another piece of advice, but you never know who's watching you.
Yeah.
So if you're having a bad game and you go to the bench and you're being a shit teammate,
Hmm.
do you think a college coach isn't watching your body language, isn't looking at you, how you celebrate when things are going bad for you, how you treat the people around you when things are going bad for you? No, these coaches watch every single thing. And even me as a coach,
Yeah.
I'm watching the same stuff. If I see my girls on the end of the bench sulking, complaining,
Hmm.
into the Coach Witt used to say, always say, get out of yourself and get into the team.
Yeah.
And if you're not out of yourself and into the team, obviously we all have our moments.
Yeah.
We all do. I've fallen short plenty of times. Even as a 6-year pro, I still fall short.
Hmm.
But with that said, the more you get out of yourself into the team, the more you realize that you never get these moments back. I'll never play with the same 12 guys that I'm playing with this year.
Yeah.
Even in college, I never played with the same team all 4 years. People are
Mhm.
graduating, people transfer.
Mhm.
You never get these opportunities again. So take full advantage of it and get out of yourself and get into the team.
Yeah. That's great advice, and that's great. That's great. Not only just, I mean, it's great advice for sport, but also in life as well, like you said. And be a good person, be a team player. Support others, and it's like you said. How do you treat people when people aren't watching, and how do you treat people that, like you said, can't really not they can't do anything for you or won't want to do anything, but they can't give anything back. How you treat those individuals is an important piece. And
And that doesn't mean being perfect.
yeah.
Like I said, I've fallen short plenty of times. I've hurt people. I've upset people. I've
Mhm.
made people mad. I've made people frustrated, sad, cry.
Mhm.
I've done it all.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I can look back on mistakes, on the way I've hurt certain people I've hurt,
Mhm.
certain actions in games where I wasn't a good teammate, practice, same thing, where I look back and say, I know how I can be better if this situation ever happens again.
Right. And it's great. Great to hear that side, and great to hear your perspective as well. But that's all the time we have for this episode of the Athlete Insights podcast. Trey, again, want to thank you for coming on, sharing your story, your perspective, your experiences. So I appreciate you coming on and hopping on with me here. I know it's late over there in Portugal, but like I said, I appreciate you hopping on, and I'll have Trey's social media linked on the video, so you can follow Trey, you can follow his journey through this year into later years as well. Follow his journey throughout his career and beyond. And then I'll have my podcast. You can follow my podcast on YouTube, Google Podcast, Apple, pretty much anywhere you get a podcast, you'll find this one.
Man, shout out to you. I think you're doing big things. So keep going. Like I told everyone else in the world, you never know who's watching, who you're impacting. So man, keep going. As your friend, as one of your best friends, you're one of my best friends, man. I'm proud of you.
Appreciate you.
You know, I couldn't do a lot of the things I do without you. So I'm proud of you, man. Keep going.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate the kind words. Same thing. The feeling is mutual on my side as well. So appreciate you. But again, appreciate you coming on and spending some time. And we'll see you next time.